Good morning. Golly jeepers, happy Father's Day to all of you who have been a masculine presence in the life of a child or a creature. I'd like to share this quick poem which expresses exactly what I mean when I say that. To the one who stood where a shadow had been, you healed the space that was empty within. Whether guarding a child in the years of their youth or meeting an inner child searching for truth. With steady devotion, you anchored the ground and brought the safe harbor that hadn't been found. For the strength you provided, the shelter you gave, you taught a soft heart how to finally be brave. Isn't that beautiful? That is what I'm talking about. And I know a great number of our dads are away, traveling to be with their children on this Father's Day, but I also know that they will be tuning in online. Lucky them. So happy Father's Day to all who provided the kind of support only an unconditionally loving, strong, comforting, fatherly presence that a child of any age needs. You are seen and you are loved, and the world is a better place because of your presence. Now, before I light this beautiful, colorful pride candle for the third week, I'd like to share another really powerful poem by J. Hume called The Beatitudes for a Queerer Church. Blessed are the outcasts, the ostracized, the outsiders. Blessed are the scared, the scarred, the silent. Blessed are the broken, for they are not broken. Blessed are the hated, for they are not worthy of hate. Blessed are those who try, those who transform, those who transition. Blessed are the closeted, God sees you shine anyway. Blessed are the queer who love creation enough to live the truth of it, despite a world that tells them they cannot. And blessed are those who believe themselves unworthy of blessing. What inconceivable wonders you hold. Will you please join me in a moment of silence for those whose lives have been lost, whose cries have gone unheard, whose stories have not yet been told, and whose beauty has been seen by too few. Thank you. Okay. I was working on today's talk when my incredible partner, Mike, who's been running laps up and down the aisles, he returned from the inaugural Monrovia Pride event that was hosted by Underdog Bookstore. And if you don't know, they're on Myrtle in downtown Monrovia for anyone who's interested. They're a small business. And they're really fantastic. You may not be aware of this. It may come as a shock. But there are people who really, really, really dislike inclusion when it comes to people they judge as not being worthy of playing in their sandbox. And this event was a rather challenging sandbox to navigate. And I have to say that Mike navigated it stunningly. The very first person to approach our SAC table was an older man who said, in a tone laced with judgment, I asked this question to somebody else and they refused to answer it. Explain to me, as if I'm from another planet and I know nothing about humans and society and all of that, explain to me why there's a need for these pride celebrations. Clearly, this person was seeking a platform where they could openly express their judgment against pride to someone who supports it. And I will tell you that Mike leans in, some might say enthusiastically, when an opportunity like this presents itself. So he said, normally I'd begin to explain this by citing the historically horrific treatment of African Americans in American society as a platform, but since you are an alien from another planet and you know nothing about race, earthly society, or history, I'll just say that there are people in the LGBTQ community who have been shunned, condemned, hurt, and even kicked out of their own families for ages, simply for expressing who they are, for being different from others. And now that they have gotten their voice back after a lifetime of forced silence, they are standing up and saying, we will no longer hide in the shadows, that we refuse to go back into a closet, that we are proud of who we are, and we are here to stay. And I know he said that because I made him type it out himself. And that man, who, again, had entered the conversation clearly seeking an argument, paused a moment, and he blinked. And then, apparently a little confused about how to respond, he said, well, thank you for explaining it to me. And he turned and walked away. Mike had taken all of the wind out of his attention-seeking little sails of derision. So bravo, my darling. You did a wonderful job. I'm so proud of you. Sometimes speaking truth in parables, such as how an outer space alien might understand our ways of being and doing, is mightily effective in ways that engaging in an argument wouldn't touch. The fact that we are speaking about oneness during the month that celebrates the rainbow of inclusion is an unplanned synchronicity which was not lost on me. How wonderful it is that I get to stand up here in front of your eyes and the camera lens of the entire vast, wide, loud-fingered internet. Y'all know what I mean. I get to stand here and speak the truth of true unity. And I am so, so very grateful that the calendar lined up with my talk schedule the way that it did. I get these little cosmic happy dance moments all the time, but I don't always get to share them with you, so I'm especially grateful for this one. I have spent my week looking into how I might go about publishing and printing my little Goosebumps parable from last Sunday. And if one of today's stories comes out well, I will seek to publish it too. Why is this important enough that I'm mentioning it in this talk? Well, close your eyes for a moment if you feel comfortable. And envision or think about what the world might be like if children were taught that they are one with everything and everyone else. That they are exactly as beautiful, purposeful, important, and beloved as everyone else, without exception. And that it is up to them to make sure that every other person and creature feels safe, held, and whole. That love was their only calling, and that anything which didn't feel loving needed more love to heal it. How would the world be if all children learned that while they were small and made it their calling during all the years of their lives into adulthood? Might be a very, very different place, right? Yeah. That is why I'm mentioning it. And why I will continue to seek new ways to connect the truths that I know with stories and imagery. Usually, I have at least some idea of where to start a talk by Saturday, but this week I was not so fortunate. But there was an image which kept coming up, and I didn't know why. And it was an iceberg. And it got me thinking. Here I am trying to teach that all is one. And we live in a world where we are constantly being told by all sorts of people and all sorts of consumable media that things have happened in which someone was wrong or bad or should be held responsible or any number of other dividing stories. And I could stand here and I could say that every story you've heard about in news and in social circles is something that has happened in the past and is being told to you by someone who judged the story from where they stood. So maybe it's only the truth they see. And I could say that it only becomes your truth when you believe it. Remember that story about the traveler and the man who sat by the fountain last week? Okay, if you don't know, go back and listen. It's on Facebook and YouTube. Now, you don't need me to retell you the story, as entertaining as it might be for me. But it may be helpful if I explain why all of those villagers viewed that young man the way that they did. So I'll tell you a different story which explains that. And again, it seems to me that all the stories I try to tell here are either set in some sort of like Elizabethan shire. You know, if you've been to Ren Fair, you know what I'm talking about. Set there, or entirely silly make-believe. There don't appear to be any alternatives to those two frames of imagination at this juncture. So in the Shire for this story, each child is given a lens the moment that they're born. It is thin and soft, and it gives the world a glow of wonder as the child looks through it. As the child grows, things begin to happen. Someone says something unkind, and a faint mark appears on the lens. A child feels embarrassed one day, and a tiny cloudiness formed. Someone they loved left, and a small crack appeared at the edge. Each child learns to be afraid of certain things. The lens grows a little thicker, a little more clouded, a little more distorted. Years pass, and each disappointment adds another layer. Each worry adds another layer. Each uncertainty adds another layer. Each belief about who they are adds another layer. Each belief about who others are adds another layer. And because every child in the Shire wears a lens, nobody thinks this is unusual. In fact, the elders would sometimes compare them. Look how thick and intelligent mine has become. Well, mine is thicker still. Some polished their lenses proudly. Some decorated them. Ooh. Some spent their entire lives protecting them. Very few ever looked beyond them. And because the lenses slowly thickened year after year, nobody noticed what was happening. Each no longer saw people as people, not truthfully. Through one lens, everyone was disappointing. Through another, everyone was suspicious. Through another, there were only heroes and victims, no other roles. The frightened saw danger. The angry saw offense. The lonely saw rejection. And each villager became increasingly certain that they were seeing the world exactly as it was. One day, not unlike the other story, not even remotely unlike it, in fact, it was the identical traveler who visited this village of lenses. You remember him. almost immediately he noticed something peculiar. The villagers disagreed about nearly everything. The baker insisted that the world was harsh. The blacksmith was certain that people were trustworthy. The merchant believed danger lurked around every corner. The school teacher was convinced that nobody listened. Sound familiar, teachers? Each spoke with complete certainty. The traveler found this strange because they all lived in the same village. And the traveler finds this both interesting and concerning. He sits and he puzzles for what he believes was a good while, watching each of these people with thick lenses of all sizes and shapes and colors and textures in front of their eyes, and wondering exactly what they were doing until he sees a small child draw near. The child is watching the traveler watch the citizens of the Shire. My grandmother says the world is frightening, says the child. And what do you think? Asks the traveler. I don't know, said the child. I've only ever seen it through her stories. And this gave the traveler a moment of clarity. When was the last time you looked at your lens instead of through it? He asked. He sees the child's enormous looking eyes blink at him through her extraordinary lens. Once, twice, and then the child reaches out, grabs on, and holds the lens up to the sunlight for the first time. The scratches, the stains, the layers, the fingerprints, the old stories, everything becomes visible, and the child laughs because they finally realize the world wasn't cloudy. Their lens was. Do you see how that works? That moment at the Pride event yesterday where a man wanted argument was met with love. And that was the moment the man discovered, perhaps for the first time, that the lens he was looking through might not be showing him the world exactly as it truly is. But how does this relate to the idea of oneness? It is clear that these lenses of judgment color our world and tell us a story about who we are and who they are and who belongs where, right? But what if there's more to it? Something deeper. Now I'm going to go into silly mode because I'd like to introduce you to Clarence. Clarence is new to the ocean, in a manner of speaking. He broke off from home only a few days ago, and now he appears to be a tiny chunk of ice floating in a huge ocean. But Clarence is hiding a secret. There's more to him than meets the eye, because Clarence isn't a mere ice chunk. No, he's an iceberg. There's so much more to him, but he is hiding it all below the surface, where it's safe, where it can't be shaken or melted away, because if nobody sees it, he thinks, I'll be safe. Then one day, Clarence's floating is interrupted by a great bang, a grinding and shaking ripple through him, and he's suddenly awake and aware, but he can't figure out what happened. He scans the horizon, and way, 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 way over there, almost too far away to see, there's another chunk of ice. Hey, he calls out. Did you just feel that? What? I can't hear you. Can you talk a little louder? Comes the reply. He didn't know it at the time, but that little chunk of ice was named Cordelia. I said, did you just feel that? He shouts quite a bit louder, just in time for another bang. And this time he hears the voice cry out, "Ouch!" "Wait," thinks Clarence, "I was just sitting here minding my business. How did I hurt her? She hurt me." A great grinding, rumbling sound pierces the air, and both Clarence and Cordelia gasp in shock. "Pardon me, but have you any Grey Poupon?" comes a rather regal-sounding voice from above. Sorry, I could not resist that. The two look up from their great distance apart, and they see a small but rather loud little puff of cloud smiling down at them. "What's all the shouting about, friends?" says this cloud. "He just rammed into me and then ran away all the way over there before I could catch him," shouted Cordelia. "Me?" Clarence hollered back. "I was floating here minding my own business, and you hit me." The cloud's smile grew wider and wider as Clarence and Cordelia argued, pointing imaginary little icy fingers at each other. And the more they argued, the more amused the cloud was. In fact, after not very long, the little cloud was laughing. It was laughing so hard that it began to cry. Have you ever been there? And as those little joyful tears rained down on Clarence and Cordelia, the two stopped arguing long enough to call up, "Hey, what's so funny up there, little cloud? You think you're so tough? Come down here and show us what you're made of." And this gave the little cloud pause, though the smile never left. It just softened. "Oh, little icebergs," it said. "If you could only see the truth of you, all that you keep hidden, the fears, the stories, the hurts, the hopes you think are yours alone, are not separate from anyone else's. It is the belief that they belong only to you that keeps you bumping against everything else. It is why you find yourself trembling and splintering and feeling injured. It is why you feel so all alone. But what you cannot see is that you are the ocean. Both of you are one ocean appearing in different forms. In the ocean, everything is beautiful and nothing is hidden, whether you think it is or not. Yes, even the parts of you you hide are seen and loved." It grew quiet then. That was quite a lot for Clarence and Cordelia to consider, but somehow it felt like the truth. Then Clarence had a question. "Okay, if we're an ocean, then what are you?" he asked. Somehow knowing the answer, even as the words left him, the cloud began to rain. This time generously and lovingly, and as Clarence and Cordelia watched the cloud fall all around them in beautiful drops of water, they heard a whisper, "We are all the ocean." My friends, as adorable and fanciful as these stories may be, as childlike as they appear, they are hiding something bigger. You see, we all fear, and we all love. We think we are so very clever and wise that nobody can see our fear, as long as we dress it up as something else. But there's a singular truth that you've heard me say over and over again, and I will give you a spoiler alert here. If you keep showing up, you'll hear me say it many more times, and it is this: the only thing that is real is love. Everything else is fear. Give the fear a voice, a real voice. Find it. Give it a chance to be seen, and something almost magical happens. The fear no longer has to hide. And what no longer hides begins to lose its power. The moment fear is brought into the light, love begins its work. The fear that says, if we let them in, our lives will be changed, and I don't know what that means for me. Will I be safe? Will I be okay? Sometimes that shows up as forcefulness. Sometimes it shows up as curious strangers asking loaded questions from the perspective of an outer space alien. The fear that says, I feel like you'll never love me. I'm afraid you'll never include me or let me be a part of you. That can show up as control, as list making and case building. The fear that says, I'm all alone and I'm afraid I always will be. Well, that fear can show up in all sorts of ways. And we have a choice. Iceberg or cloud? Iceberg or cloud? Regardless of whether you keep your distance or shower them in the love that they cry out for, a singular truth remains. You and they are made of the same stuff. We all are. What will you choose? Only you can decide. But if you ask me, I say, be the cloud. Rain down love. Amen.